this is the last session. So guys, like if you're still here, please don't skip out early, because the industrious Kevin Indig, whom I've learned so much from, will be sharing his study of 1,200 domains and what it tells us about zero-click searches. It tells us about SERP features, about getting traffic, and of course we're joined here by Bill King and Eli Schwartz. Say hello, guys. Can we? Is it on? You guys live?
Good from my end.
Yeah.
Hey guys, it's breaking up a little bit for me, but I'll try to hang in there.
Yeah.
No problem.
Right.
Usually would be with Eli over in Palo Alto, but today I'm in cold Chicago, in the G2 headquarters. But I brought a little bit of sun, so yeah. Thanks for hanging in there remotely, Eli.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. Where are you calling in from, Eli?
I'm in Palo Alto. It's nice and sunny. The summer has started, and it's beautiful. Palo Alto, Northern California.
Oh, beautiful.
Can't say the same, guys. We're working on it.
The weather will get to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe just in the meantime, while you're figuring out some technical difficulties there, Bill, if you can just mute, just because we're getting a little bit of a feedback. Awesome. All right. Kevin, if you can take it away with your awesome presentation, we'd love to begin.
Absolutely. I am more than ready to present some really cool stuff. So let me share my screen, and we should be going live. So can you all see my screen?
Guys.
Cool. Awesome. Hang tight. It's going to be a lot in here. A lot of cool stuff. So my topic is zero-click searches, SERP features, getting traffic. And I was so lucky to get a big data set from SEMrush that I will explain in just a second. First, a little bit of housekeeping. I was already introduced by Nick, so I'm not going to waste too much time here. You can find me on this thing called the internet. But if you actually attend one of these conferences, I would love to hang out with you. So if you are going to be in Berlin next week, if you're going to be in Brighton in April, in Miami in May, in Estonia in June, in New York City in July, or in Chiang Mai in Thailand in November, I would love to hang out. So please reach out on Twitter or email or anywhere else, and then maybe we can set something up. With that being said, let's jump right into the topic, actually. So in 2018, Google published a very important piece of content on their blog. It was the 20th anniversary of Google Search, and the SVP of Search News and Assistant, Ben Gomez, published a piece about what the next 20 years of search will actually look like. And this piece of content basically sets the foundation for everything that we're seeing in search today and for everything that I'm expecting to see in the next coming of years. So if you haven't checked it out yet, I can strongly recommend it. It's absolutely vital and fundamental. In this piece, he mentions three big trends, or basically shifts. The first one is from answers to journeys. So Google's intent is not really to give you like a simple answer to your problem. It's much more to be an assistant for you in your whole user journey. It also wants to go away from queries more to a query-less experience. We'll dive exactly into what that means. And then lastly, Google wants to move from text to a more visual way of finding information, and they do that pretty well. So then in 2018, I actually wrote this article on my blog titled From Search to Discovery Engine, describing all these changes. But when I look back, I think I should have called it From Search to Answer Engine, because we see a lot of SERP features within that transition that actually target users and try to give them a direct answer to their problem instead of sending them to other websites. But Ben Gomez also mentioned a very important piece of technology that's called the topic layer. So the topic layer is very similar to the knowledge graph, but actually targets users' interests. So to take a step back, you can imagine it or visualize it like that. You have the knowledge graph, which is Google's database of entities, meaning places, books, people, brands, all these kind of things, of which it understands the relationships. So Google knows exactly how certain people relate to a certain city or to a certain book that I might have read, that I might have written. But the topic layer is kind of another dimension in that database that looks at, as the name says, topics, right? Everything from trends, ideas, anything that people talk about at the moment, and merges these two concepts. And the result are a lot of the SERP features that we see today. And Google hasn't even tried to make this a secret or to kind of be very passive about that. In fact, last year, Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google and now also Alphabet, publicly announced that Google changes from a search engine to an assistant that helps you getting things done. He said that at Google I/O, which does not take place this year, but this has been like a major thing, and it might have gone under a little bit, and I wanted to bring it back to everybody's attention. So all that being taken into account and the big changes that I have seen since 2018, I reached out to Ivan from SEMrush and asked him if I was able to get any data showing anything about traffic that helps him to really understand how these SERP features impact certain websites and certain verticals. And so he was so kind to send me a data set of over 1,200 domains, both for mobile and desktop, basically over the course of 2018 and 2019. The data comes directly from a new tool called Traffic Analytics tool that I can strongly recommend you to check out if you want to see any other sites' traffic beyond just organic traffic or paid traffic. It actually does a really good job. And also showing you channels like direct traffic, social, email, all that kind of good stuff. So what did I do with that data? First of all, I jumped into traffic winners and losers on an industry level. And bear with me because I know there's a lot of information on that chart, but if I had to boil it down, the first trend that I spotted was that the industries of entertainment and education grow a lot, while technology and references shrink. What these industries mean is, you can imagine it like that. So entertainment is mainly Netflix, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube. Education is all the are sites like Course Hero or Chegg. Technology are actually search engines, and references are dictionaries and encyclopedias. So just to make that a bit more visible and tangible, in fact, the absolute winner industry, education, grew by over 500 million clicks from 2018 to 2019. That's a 25% growth in that industry, and that's actually major. I mean, if you look at other industries or other markets, if they even grow by just 5%, that usually is a big deal. But we see major movements here, also in industries like science and accommodation. And when we talk about accommodation, or accommodation, travel, and tourism, there's one player that I really want to highlight, which is Booking.com. And the stunning thing about Booking.com is not only that they were able to increase their organic traffic by almost 50%, but they're also able to bring more than 55% of their total traffic through direct visitors. And that to me is actually one of the strongest signals for a very healthy and strong brand, which to me is also a bit of the remedy to the SERP features that Google is showing to answer people's question. Because when you have a strong brand, as Booking shows, people come straight to your site, right? They come straight to you. But what Booking also does pretty well is that they max out their brand potential by keeping people in their ecosystem. So what happens when you come to Booking.com is they give you a strong offer right away for signing up. And then once you're signed up for either their web app or native app or an email newsletter, you are in an environment that they can much better control. And that means that they don't just give you an answer or help you do something, they actually tie you closer to their brand. They keep you in that ecosystem. And that's, to me, one big factor in their success and in maximizing what a brand can offer. But coming back to education, as I mentioned before, one of the strongest growing verticals as well. And what we see here is that the whole industry grows about 17% year over year, but there are actually a couple of very interesting shifts. So first of all, desktop traffic still makes the majority of online education. And to me, that is a signal that most people still use their desktop devices to learn online, which makes perfect sense. There's only so much you can learn on a smartphone, right? But then there's also this very interesting rivalry between Check and Course Hero. You see them in green and turquoise on the chart. And so Check still gets more desktop traffic than Course Hero, but Course Hero gets way more mobile traffic. And so bottom line, that means Course Hero gets more traffic in total. And what's interesting about that is that mobile traffic is actually growing much, much faster in that industry than desktop traffic. And you can also see on the left-hand side that Course Hero gets way more mobile traffic than all the other players. So to me, that's a story where you have a very competitive field, but one company invested in future growth and seems to fare pretty well with that. I also talked about science. And the vertical of science is basically made up of research sites. So sites like ResearchGate, Academia, or JSTOR, who provide medical studies, not only medical, but any type of scientific study. And that whole sector is growing by over 2/3 from 2018 to 2019, and does pretty strongly. So to me, that's also a good kind of representation of Google's efforts and the whole web to get rid of fake news and evangelize and establish more facts and more science in Google search. So we see that the whole kind of industry getting more traffic. We look at health, another one of the biggest winner industries. It's very interesting to see that this is a mobile game instead of a desktop game, as for other industries. So what you see here are basically two different websites, Mayo Clinic and Cleveland Clinic. They're by far the biggest player in the space. And Mayo Clinic is also way, way bigger than Cleveland Clinic. And what's interesting is that they also get way, way more mobile traffic than desktop traffic. In fact, I think it's about more than 4 times as much mobile traffic as they get desktop traffic. And that comes back to people just researching a bit more on their phone. So when you have, it fits perfectly into the context, like say you want to look for the symptoms of coronavirus, then you would probably, there's a much higher likelihood that you do this on your phone because you've been somewhere and you saw the news, or you're watching TV and you see an update and you look at, okay, what's actually going on there. When we talk about the health industry, we also have to talk about Healthline. They are the success story of the last 2 years, growing almost 1/3 of their traffic on mobile and more than 20% on desktop, to a substantial amount of visitors. And they're really kind of passing all the other players in the space here. So WebMD, for example, is the more established site. They're currently being bypassed by Healthline. And Healthline is actually very interesting. They're I think VP of Digital or VP of Media or something did a podcast interview a couple of years ago where she talked about how they have over 50 writers. And I think some of these might be temporary or freelance writers, but they have been investing into massive content very early on, and that seems to pay off right now. We talk about the loser industries. There's this kind of I would say nuclear bomb in this industry, which is search engines. As you can see here, search engines are by far the biggest loser in terms of traffic of the last 2 years. We also have social networks, which are really interesting, but I think search engines is something that a lot of people would not really expect to see. And when we look at the domains, there's one big shocker, which is that Google has lost a ton of traffic over the last 2 years. In fact, over 800 million visits, according to SEMrush data. And then there are also lots of other known players in the space: Wikipedia, Reddit, YouTube, IMDB, WordPress. I mean, I can go through the whole list. They're all huge brands, big sites that lost tons of traffic. No one comes close to Google, though. When we look at Wikipedia, one thing that really stands out is that they have lost a lot of featured snippets in the last 3 years. And I wanted to show a bit of the SEMrush web UI here as well, instead of just showing you my own charts, to see that you can also see some of that data yourself, right? And what becomes very apparent is that on desktop and on mobile, we see this kind of big decline in featured snippets that Wikipedia ranks for. And for me, this is a very interesting thing to actually look at all the time, because Wikipedia is still the biggest information site out there, even though YouTube is the largest site now in terms of just total traffic, right? But Wikipedia for me has always been this kind of goalpost to see, okay, where are featured snippets going to, and how is information treated in the SERPs. What's also interesting is that Google has massively ramped up carousels in the last 12 months. Here's another screenshot from the SEMrush web UI. And on the right-hand side, you can see how certain, like even simple informational queries show a carousel. In this case, it's the query keto diet, for which I wouldn't have necessarily expected a carousel, but Google just shows different types of diets, and that does not really help a player like Wikipedia. Now, we can argue if people actually click on that carousel, or if they actually want to learn more about the keto diet in this case, but it is certainly something that is relatively new that seems to hurt sites in that space, especially Wikipedia. So we see that just from September to October of 2019, there was almost like a 60% increase in carousels, which is pretty substantial. Another site that deals with this on an ongoing basis is IMDB. And for IMDB, I looked at the knowledge panels and how they changed over time. And what you can see here is that we have a bigger kind of increase, at least starting 2017 in knowledge panels. And IMDB, I mean, when you just look at the SERP on the right-hand side, this is a very tough field to stand out from, because you see all sorts of different modules that try to answer different user intents, like IMDB with reviews, but then you also have trailers, you have top stories, and then you have this huge knowledge panel on the right-hand side, which also integrates IMDB reviews, but also Rotten Tomatoes or other providers of reviews. So this just commoditizes reviews a bit more and makes it harder for IMDB to stand out, even though they rank number 2 on this SERP, but I don't expect them to get much traffic from it. Also very interesting, I mentioned dictionaries and thesauruses as some of the losers here, and that's no surprise, or it shouldn't come to anyone as a surprise, given how easily it is, or how easy it is to get your answers straight in the search results nowadays directly from Google. My story here is that only if Google does a really poor job in giving you a definition, or maybe even synonyms and antonyms, that you would then click through to another site. But it certainly makes it harder. And you see on the left-hand side also that Google, thesaurus.com ranks for way fewer knowledge panels, so is being kind of pushed away by Google's direct answers here. What I also found very interesting is Amazon.com. They lost 12% desktop traffic in the US over the last 2 years. You see they kind of recovered in October and November and December a little bit of 2019. But the story is also that Amazon doesn't really have to worry about any type of competition. There's still magnitudes of traffic away from Walmart or Alibaba. So I think they are also such a strong destination now that they don't really have to worry about organic traffic to the extent that other players might have. But what I've also found interesting when we come back to Google is that they have not only lost traffic in the US, but they have also lost traffic in most other countries. The only countries that they actually did gain traffic in were smaller ones like Poland or Sweden, and then Russia is slightly bigger, but they face much stronger competition there from Yandex, and at the same time, it's not really one of their core markets. The danger that I see behind Google's loss of traffic is that Google is it's probably the most successful startup in humanity. Right, they have achieved a 20% revenue growth year over year for the last, probably since birth, like nothing else. Right, they're running like clockwork, and the problem with that is that when you compare this against the traffic trend, you see that the pressure to bring in great results, especially from shareholders, is increasing, but they have fewer means to achieve that, right? So again, it's becoming harder and harder to achieve these amazing revenue results. But when the traffic is declining, I feel like, or my story is that they're kind of being pushed a little bit in a corner. And that's why we see such an aggressive increase in SERP features and direct answers. What I also found very interesting in the data is that the second biggest search engine is actually not Bing, it's actually Baidu, and that by a far, right? So what you see here is the comparison of traffic 2018 to 2019. You see that, you know, as talked about before, Google lost about 60%. Bing stayed about flat. DuckDuckGo grew almost 2x, which is, you know, pretty cool to see for such a small player. It's kind of the people's champ. And Baidu, interestingly, lost also a little bit of traffic, but they're still 10 times larger than Bing when it comes to overall traffic, and still way, way smaller compared to Google. But that was a very interesting story that I found in the data. And also mobile traffic is just so much more important to search engines, right? When you look at Google, they get almost 50% more mobile than desktop traffic. Bing gets about 10 times more mobile traffic compared to desktop traffic. DuckDuckGo also about 5 times more. And the only outlier here is Baidu, which I found very interesting because China is a much more mobile heavy or smartphone heavy country compared to most countries in the Western world. They kind of skipped the laptop era, and that made it, you know, even more surprising that Baidu still gets more desktop traffic compared to mobile. But anyway, now what you have to keep in mind here from that slide is that search engines, like, they push mobile for a reason. It's because people just use mobile way, way more. And that's not only for search engines, but also for all the industries. So here you see mobile compared to desktop traffic. And it's just mobile is just 2 times bigger compared to desktop. Well, we're already talking about desktop. The overall desktop traffic over the last 2 years decreased by 9%. So that's almost 10%. And it's actually a pretty fast drop rate. So again, desktop is like more and more is being done on mobile devices. And desktop doesn't really grow. There might be certain outliers, like I said, online education, but bottom line is actually that, as we all know, the world shifts more towards mobile. So to recap that real quick, very surprisingly, Google is losing a lot of traffic. More sites depend on SERP features, but are also being kind of pushed out a little bit. We see 2 times as much mobile traffic compared to desktop, and then desktop traffic declines overall across the board. Now, what this basically leads to is that Google becomes this winner-takes-it-all environment, which doesn't leave that much more room for attention in the search results. So here you see one keyword that's relatively important for us at G2, expense management, and it's a comparison of desktop versus mobile. You can also see that the desktop search result is relatively clean, while on mobile you see way more SERP features that try to answer the user's question. Now, the problem when you look at the actual data in the Search Console is not that we only get 70 clicks out of almost 12,000 impressions on desktop. I mean, that's already frustrating when you rank number 3 on average. But what's even more stunning is that on mobile, even though we rank on average 5.4, we don't even get a lot of impressions, right? We get a bit more than 300, which tells me that probably a lot of people don't even scroll down to our results because they get their answer from Google SERP features before that. So yeah, very frustrating, but also very telling for the kind of direction that we see all of this heading towards. When we talk about some recent events, we also have to talk about Google stopping the deduplication of featured snippets. So in late January, Danny Sullivan confirmed on Twitter that when you rank in a featured snippet, you will not get an additional ranking in the quote-unquote organic search results. However, now there is no position 0 anymore, right? We only have basically organic search results, and I made it relatively clear. And I took that as an occasion to look for the impact on click-through rate. And so I looked at 2,000 of our featured snippets at G2. And the conclusion that I came to is that there is not a huge impact. I think we lost maybe a percentage point of click-through rate on average, but not much. And as you see here on the left side, I did this analysis exclusively for desktop, on the right side for mobile, and on bottom line, it kind of, like some things changed for sure, but when you look at it in an aggregated view, there wasn't that much change visible. However, what I found very interesting is that the average click-through rate was still 43%, which is pretty high, right? That's pretty close to 50%. And so to me, this whole kind of development of stopping the deduplication and SERP features and still getting 43% of click-through rate for featured snippets tells me that there is an opportunity for some sort of a network effect, right? So the traffic on the SERP is more geared towards the top result, and the bottom results just get less. And so to me, there is a network effect that smart companies have to go after, which means that you basically you get traffic and you use the returns or the revenue from that traffic to get more traffic, right? It's this kind of network effect or flywheel that spins up over time. Now, what I also conclude is that Google is becoming much more of a destination than an actual search engine. And certain companies feel that very painfully. So Expedia, for example, kicked their CEO out last year, and they mention Google's competition quite a lot in the reasoning. TripAdvisor is going through major pains and drops in stock or in stock price. And they also mention competition from Google quite a lot. And you can't really be angry about them or kind of blame them when you see some of the Google Flight integrations, which doesn't leave a lot of room to diversify, really. Same with hotel search. You're mostly differentiated by price and location and maybe reviews. So very tough for for brands to stand out here. I also see a lot of so-called SERP mazes. Which means that, here in this case, for example, is a featured snippet that we got with G2, and we get these nice image thumbnails at the top of it. But the problem is when you click on an image thumbnail, you are not directed to our site, but actually you get to another SERP. And then on mobile, it's even worse. Google pulls this kind of accordion on top of our search result. And when you click on one of the arrows, your result is shown right next to a competitor. So not the best position to be in. Google is also becoming a sports magazine or a destination for sports. So if you type in anything like NFL or NHL or NBA, you get all the stats, the games, news, videos, players, all that kind of stuff. And of course, on mobile, it's even worse. Like, why would you even click through to another site? And the premier sports leagues actually feel that, So on the left side, I show the decline in desktop traffic, on the right side in mobile. And sites or leagues like NFL.com actually lost almost 30% of their traffic in the last, comparing 2018 to 2019, which is pretty substantial. We also saw Google rolling out Cameos, which are video answers to questions that people have. I see Barry Schwartz here, and that makes me, to me, that makes Google more of a destination for people. So I expect them to add more of those SERP features for named searches. It becomes a bit freaky when we look for something like movies. So now when you look for movies, you can buy tickets in the search results right away. Or if you're not sure what you want to watch, you can just search for what to watch, and you find huge carousels with inspiration, but you also find the reviews straight up and the platforms that you can watch them on. And if if you want to do this on desktop, you get the carousels, but also a huge query refinement bubble at the top of it, so that Google makes sure that they can show you exactly what you're looking for. And my favorite example is breakfast, because I love breakfast, but also because this is pretty crazy. So you see these query refinement bubbles on the right side again, where you can just narrow your search further down. But then the crazy thing is when you click on one of those images that you see at the bottom here, you actually get the recipe right away in the search results. And that's pretty painful, right? There's no more site necessary here, right? Like, why would you even click through here? So then the big question is, what can we do to wrap this up? And the first thing that I recommend here is to make mobile really your source of truth for anything you're looking at. I still see way too many screenshots and debates about desktop results, not enough about mobile. But when you look at, when you compare the click-through rates or the traffic that you get from both devices, then it gets pretty crazy, right? So here for our brand keyword, for example, we get about 7% click-through rate compared to 21 on desktop. And I also urge you to compare your desktop and mobile traffic when you look at traffic fluctuations. It sounds like the super simple thing, but I still see way too many people just looking at total organic traffic. But as you can see here in this example, when you look at total organic traffic, you're not actually sure what's going on, because in one of those dips, it's mobile traffic that's dipping. In another one, it's actually desktop. So to further narrow the problem down, we have to put on the glasses of looking at both. We also need much, much better KPIs. And I want to quickly introduce this concept of share of voice here, but not dwell on it for too long, because we want to get into the discussions with Bill and Eli in just a second. But basically, what I urge everybody to do is to build your own custom click curve. You can do that with Search Console data, and then look at all the different categories or topics that you're targeting with a share of voice model. And share of voice is something like market share, and it works very simple. If you want to calculate the share of voice for a keyword, you can multiply the click-through rate with its search volume and divide by the topic search volume or by the category search volume, whatever you look at, whatever applies to your business. And then you get the share of voice for a keyword, which is a percentage that tells you how high the share of clicks is that you're actually getting. And what we want to, or what we should think about in the future, and this is more a thought than something that I've worked out, is something like a SERP feature factor. So I think we have to think about how SERP features kind of decrease the clicks that we get in the future. And luckily, we find some of those stats in SEMrush, where we can see exactly how many SERP features are being shown and how they might impact the traffic that we get. I also want to lose a quick word about Google Discover. Google Discover is Google's push channel compared to search, which is more pull, right? So Google proactively shows you interesting thing on the mobile app or on the mobile homepage of Google. It's become this very interesting and very efficient traffic channel. Condé Nast actually said that some of their sites get up to 20% of their total traffic from Google Discover, but all in all, Google Discover just becomes this more noticeable traffic channel. One thing that I recommend all of you to do if you publish content on a regular basis is to go to Search Console, filter for Discover. You see that on the left-hand side here. And then you can export Discover traffic by date and compare it to your mobile organic traffic. And what you'll see is that some of the traffic spikes from Discover are actually much higher than organic traffic, which tells me that this is a very interesting channel to go after. And the things that you can mainly do is write about your users' interests and use high quality images. At least that's the information that we got so far. I also urge you to go all in on SERP features themselves. So right, for people also asked boxes, for example, there's a cool tool called alsoasked.com, which you can use to pull all the different questions that people ask for a keyword. I also urge you to use the pyramid tactic for featured snippets, where you first provide the answer at the top of your content, then highlight the context and then the background a bit more in the hope to keep people on your site. Using schema Q&A or Q&A schema is an okay idea, I would say, but I want to manage your expectations, because even for the example that Google provides in the documentation, they now actually show a featured snippet, and I think we'll see much more of that in the future. And then I also urge you to, of course, use reviews. Like, why would I not say that as a review site? We have this cool widget that can help you to get star ratings in the search results, and that isn't just the case in our industry or for our purposes. You probably also get this as a local business, and that attracts a lot of clicks in the search results, which is a nice countermeasure when Google shows a lot of SERP features. I also urge you to structure your content around entities, which I talked about in the knowledge graph, and which there's a cool tool for called Entity Explorer that I can recommend you to check out and see what it inspires you to. It's only 5 slides left. I also want to urge you to get on formats like video and audio. To me, these are shortcuts like image search when Google pulled images as universal search into the regular search results. So we see a lot more videos, probably anecdotally, and we see that Google is able to understand what part of a video actually covers what topic. And now we also start to see podcast episodes in the search results. And I think we'll also see the same thing that we have seen so far with videos. And what I also think is that long-term videos will probably replace a lot of featured snippets, simply because videos are just much better answers than text, at least in most cases. And I also want to quickly show how even Spotify is indexed, not as a podcast SERP feature or a rich snippet, but actually the episodes on Spotify are being pulled into Google search. I found that when I looked for the success of Healthline, so I used the query Healthline success. What's interesting is that there's hardly any content on this Spotify episode page here. We only have a title and a description, but when we look at how the subdirectory is growing over time, we see that it's actually growing pretty substantially. And Google was able to understand that this is a good result for the success of Healthline, even though the keyword success doesn't even appear a single time. And when we talk about podcasts, we also have to talk about Google Podcasts. You can now submit your podcast very easily through RSS feed, and then hopefully appear in name searches and in the future for much, much more. So if that was a bit frustrating to you, seeing how Google answers more and more queries directly, then I can encourage you to keep going. Search is still the biggest traffic channel by far, with over 50% of traffic being delivered to sites. So you see Facebook, the second largest one, doesn't even come close. And then at number 3, we have Google News again. That was also verified by a recently published study from Alexa Internet, where they showed that in most verticals, search is still by far the biggest traffic channel. So that's just a little wrap up of what's currently going on in terms of zero clicks and SERP features. I always say that, if you don't know how to win a game or how to play a game, you can't win it. So now you know how to play the game. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. That was incredible. That was really, really awesome. I'm sure like a lot of people learned a lot, and there was a lot of really good actionable stuff that you can take away right now and test out with your sites right now. So I just kind of want to just say, like, right now, if anyone's been following Bill Slawski, he really is a canary in the mine shaft, like, for this kind of stuff, because he released his awesome article that was saying that this was going to happen, like, based off a patent that we were seeing, and now this is kind of like the result of that, which I think is a really good segue to like the first question. Where do you see the future of SERP features and Google's push into becoming an answer machine? Who would like to take this one?
Can I jump in?
Yeah, definitely.
So I think ultimately Google does want to be the answer engine. And I think it's amazing, Kevin, how you started with that. Like, Google's mission was always to organize the world's information, and that will continue to be their mission. And they're just doing it in different ways. Like, when they first started, it was about collecting the web like a library and helping people to find the place they're going. And as they advance, they're now understanding the users. So it's like one of the things you see with BERT is BERT's not about organizing the web. BERT is about getting into the user's head and understanding exactly what it is the user wants, and then helping them to write that query, even if you don't see them writing that query, and then giving results for the query they've written for you. So that is absolutely organizing information when we don't even know what we're looking for. Like, as an example, if you just look for something dumb, like one query I like to play with is, I show this, if you think about a movie like Legally Blonde, and you don't realize that the actress or the character in the movie went to Harvard instead of Yale, or if you don't think you don't even know the name of the actress, you don't know that she's blonde, maybe you think she's brunette. Try any of those queries, like, movie about brunette that went to UCLA, you will get results for Legally Blonde. So Google's getting into your head. They're helping you to figure that out. So I think that's what's going to be the growth of featured snippets. They're going to find more and more things that we're looking for, give us more and more information. And I noticed there was a comment early in the presentation about voice search. Voice search is driven by featured snippets. And I don't think we will see voice search take over all of search for a long time, because not every query can be answered by a single answer. There has to be a choice. Like, a search from voice really has to be perfect. Google has to know exactly what you want and give you exactly what you want. Like, the sports scores is a great example. You want to know the score of the game. there's only one actual score of the game. Whereas when it comes to like, who's the best doctor in my area, or what recipe should I use, there has to be multiple answers. So that cannot really be answered by voice, and it can hardly be answered by a featured snippet because they don't know what you want or what should be the best answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, to go on that topic, Eli, I think that's a great point you made. I think if you think about the lifetime of how you would search for a topic, I think what they're trying to do, in my opinion, is two things. Is number one is monetize as much of that life cycle of how you would potentially be researching something through the course of your time. So if they can reduce friction up to the first data point, what are the questions and what are the types of media that you want throughout the lifetime of you researching that particular topic, and how do they optimize that? And I think like we're, over here at Drift, we have an internal audio and video production team. And so like we're at an advantage to be able to serve that long tail of your research. So let's go down the path of breakfast. Kevin mentioned earlier that he likes breakfast. Your initial inquiry might be, how do I eat healthier at breakfast? Or like, how do they get that answer up as quick as possible? But then the longer string of your discovery through the course of breakfast, you might be thinking about a wide range of things. Do I want to look at a bunch of different recipes? Do I want to learn how to eat healthier? There's all these different ways you could potentially engage of that topic throughout the lifetime. So I think, like, as usual, our jobs are changing all the time. And so I think there's going to be a ton of value to like how you really dig in deep on the path and the types of formats that people want to engage with through the course of that entire topic. Because if going to that booking example where you're looking at, once you get the traffic, try to retain and monetize that user, I think that's actually what is exactly happening on both ends. So brands who are doing a really, really good job of keeping users, monetizing them, cross-selling them, et cetera, I think Google's doing something similar on their end, where they're saying, how do I get them at least engaged on a topic and understand how many times I can hit them? Because you come back 10 or 15 times for content on breakfast to Google, that's 15x more clicks that they can get through the life cycle of you on that topic. And so I think like we have to start thinking about not over-optimizing to the first initial answer, but like, how do I carry that throughout the lifetime of them researching and whether in the market for that information.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just on like featured snippets, Kevin, you mentioned that Danny did confirm that if you were to get a featured snippet that you wouldn't get an organic listing. Of course, we know that there's like the Know Snippet Tag or the Max Snippet Tag, where you can sort of define whether you will show up for a featured snippet or not, or maybe you only will show up for a certain character limit. Is there like cases in which you would sort of look at this and say, like, actually there is not a good reason that we should show for a featured snippet here, and we should probably go for an organic listing, and vice versa?
Yeah, I think that is a great question, because I thought about that a lot. I want to preface that we also have to use a lens of distinguishing between industries and businesses. So this case study that I did was that was for G2, that was for our vertical, and that might look very different for other sites and verticals. Is there a case when you would not want to go for a featured snippet? I honestly don't think so, because the way that I explain it to myself is that when you show for a featured snippet that gives away an answer that is enough that the user wouldn't click through, it probably wouldn't have been a high quality visitor anyway, if that makes sense. I think, like we saw some businesses or some examples like dictionary.com or thesaurus.com. I think those are big businesses that are pretty dead, to be honest. And maybe I'm a bit bold in my projection here, but I think for them it doesn't even really matter if there's a featured snippet or not, because Google is going to get the answer. And then for other businesses, if I think specifically in our case, say somebody looks for the pricing for a piece of software, I still would expect them to click through to our site to actually kind of learn more about that software. So I think that would be valuable. But other than that, I don't even think the question is, should I show up for the snippet or not? I think you should always try to get the featured snippet no matter what. And if it's enough for the user to not click through, then it's probably not a high quality search term for you anyway. But I'd be very curious to hear what Eli and Bill think about that as well. And also you, Nick, like you're not only a questioner here. I would want to hear your experience as well.
Yeah. Well, actually, thanks for that, because like with a large enterprise site that I'm working with, we got review snippets and things like that across all of their products, which was awesome. And we were really expecting to see maybe a better click-through rate or anything like that. We actually saw that it went down a bit, but we saw revenue increase dramatically, and we just think that that's just basically what you were saying before, like a better qualified lead that is actually clicking through to those pages, making a better informed decision and purchasing. So, that's something that we're, if we had applied like a Know Snippet Tag, probably wouldn't have applied, because it kind of applies to all of those things. So that's definitely something that we've seen. Eli, have you seen something with your featured snippets in your sites that you manage?
Yeah, so that was great, Kevin, that you mentioned the idea of dictionaries. So I worked with a company last year that they had a dictionary product. It was a mobile app called Drops. They did not have a website. It helped them to build out the architecture on the website. And they are competing against Google Translate. And they launched in June. And since June, they've had over 80 million impressions. And I wrote a quick case study on LinkedIn. So this is a vertical where if what was working for you is no longer working, you have to do something different. And Kevin, I loved how you ended with keep going, right? So the world has changed. We're not going to go like, sue Google back into giving us featured snippets. We're not going to be able to sue Google or have the government come and say that we're entitled to getting double ranking. We're entitled to featured snippet and the first position. It's not going to change. So now we have to embrace the future. So what this company did was, instead of us building out dictionary results where you put in a word and you get a translation for it, we built out sentences and phrases, and Google does not do that well. So if you want to understand, like, how do you do an engagement proposal if you're an English speaker in Spanish, this website has the solution for you, and they rank on those kind of queries. If you want to know how to order breakfast, this is the way you do it. And people search those queries, and they are the best result for those queries, competing against other dictionaries, and they've been able to drive a tremendous amount of traffic. So I think featured snippets was not the silver bullet people thought it was. There are ways to manipulate it, of course. Like if you have that featured snippet and you don't want the featured snippet, you can move the content around, make sure you're not giving away all of the answer. So I think, really the world has changed. You have to continue to roll with it. And I love using tools like SEMrush, where you can find out the data about what people are searching and see searches that are breaking out. And of course, all the data you gather, Kevin, around like, who's getting traffic, and change your strategy. And that's the best thing about SEO is, like, if there was like a book where, you implement this playbook and anybody can do it, then we wouldn't have jobs. But there isn't. You need to be able to use data, and you need to be able to come with strategies, and it's always changing.
I think that's a great point, Eli. And I think, like, because we're in this every day and we're thinking, how do we get as much traffic as possible? Google isn't playing the short game as much as people who are in SEO every day. And so they don't have as much pressure to sort of like solve for, should I be in an instant answer or not? I think that's asking the wrong question. I think what Eli just mentioned is actually answering the question the right way, which is, how do I take the intent and the interest around this topic, and how do I create a great answer for that specific intent? And I think, like, you're playing a really dangerous game if you're trying to tell Google that this topic isn't relevant to the users that are related to you. And I think, like, that might work in the short term, but I think it might end up biting you in the long run.
Yeah. I think that's really, really good, just to say, like, okay, well, yes, it's changed. Take the question, the intent, and think about maybe a more creative way of being able to give that answer to users, which I think is a really good segue for the next question from Jeannie Hill. She's directed it to Kevin. We are so familiar with query-based search. What upcoming ways do you think that Google will use to provide relevant information via queryless search? For example, using more Discover development.
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're on the, thanks for asking that, Jeannie, and you're on the right track here. So I see two avenues. First of all, Discover, and Google Discover, that is, and the topic layer. So Google Discover, again, Google tries to push more content to you, and in some cases they do a pretty decent job, I have to say. But they're not going to wait for you to search for something. They're going to actually suggest you different things that might be interesting to you at the time. It's usually very newsy content, so in fact, news still gets like, I think, the majority of clicks in Google Discover. The second thing is the topic layer, and you see this probably in the form of rich cards, carousels, and knowledge graph integrations, where Google shows you actually very interesting stuff. So you would Google something like a football player's name, for example, and then it shows you the teams that he was on, news about him, videos, and all that kind of stuff. So especially for short-head queries or kind of very like simple queries, Google doesn't leave it up to chance anymore for you to define the next query. It does whatever it can to suggest you options and show you different segues to go down to. And then I think actually what Google wants to get to is predictive search. So you see that, like what it does pretty well, I think, in Google Suggests already, is to give you really cool things that might fit to what you could have in mind based on where you are, based on what you searched for previously, and maybe other factors. And I think their goal is really to know what you want before you actually want it. And we might be still a couple of years far away from that, but could come quicker than we all anticipate.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's also really good to just sort of think about, like, resources to maybe like discover, like, how you would be able to like see what insights you can garner from that. Is there any good case studies on that topic, Eli?
So I don't know that they're really good case studies, but I want to tie this into the previous question, which is, at its heart, Google is categorizing the entire web with text. What they're doing is they're allowing database queries to find different ways of getting at the text, and Discover is one of them. So the way Discover works, and I'm an Android user and I love pulling out my phone in a crowd of iPhone users, because like if you love Google and you love SEO, you have to like that's great. Be all in on their technology. So Discover is built into my phone. Another thing that's built into my phone, which is related to the last question on queryless search, is Google Lens. So Google Lens is, if you take a picture with your Android phone, you can actually search for what the picture is. So what Google's doing is they are taking things that I couldn't even understand and using AI to match the image and then turning it into text and querying it for you. So what Discover is Discover's really, this is who you are. You read a lot about politics. You click on this website a lot, so we're going to push this at you because it's related. And like, they're not always right, and there's, ways to opt out, and sometimes it can be really annoying. Like if you accidentally clicked on one People magazine, the next thing, like Meghan Markle articles are going to be all over your phone. But that's I don't know that there's any really good case study that's come out yet, because it's, Google pushing content and trying to best understand people. And the best way to really, succeed on Discover is to put out a lot of great content and get your content in front of people in many different ways. So if people are liking your content or reading your content on social, then they're going to see your content in Discover. If people are reading and clicking through on your content on organic, they're going to see your content on Discover. So really, it's do all the things you were doing and you'll succeed in this other avenue of Google.
Yeah. That's really, really awesome. And I personally love the Google Lens just because, like, I feel like every time I use it, I am using the tricorder from Star Trek. So that's really awesome. This next question I'll direct to Bill. Is Google following the path that Facebook led with engagement-driven timelines? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think so. Kind of going off what Eli just mentioned, which is like, if you think about Google as kind of a CRM versus just an information discovery engine, I think these new like options like discovery are kind of ways to like discover how many, not to use that word again, but what topics are super interesting to you, and how do we use the engagement that you're using across all the properties that we have on you to collect like without a reasonable doubt that something is really, really relevant to you. And so someone like Eli, who loves Android and Google products, imagine the amount of information that they have to make that prediction or to create that hypothesis. So, of course, like the way that we interact with these pieces of information is changing. It's becoming more dynamic, but also the amount of data that you have when you have much more dynamic content, I think provides a lot more context, right? So if let's go to like just a random topic like baseball, right? So you might be looking at what the score is today, but as you engage with different types of more dynamic content, like how Facebook and all the other platforms are using video, they're becoming much more focused on like serving up different rich formats. All that is interesting and fun as a user, but as like a data scientist or an engineer at Google, that offers you just a larger set of information that you can then customize the experience to. So I think they're probably drawing some lessons from all the social folks out there who are doing a great job of building a very engaging platform, and I think that might be where things are heading in the future.
Yeah, that's really, really awesome. I like where that's going to lead in the future, because I'm seeing a lot more that's structured data is just being built into the theme for in CMSs. If you are using WordPress, Yoast offers that as a preliminary function to be able to organize all of your data points, like review views or FAQs, or just like your generic like organizational schema as well.
Yeah. So coming up with
you
the perfect recipe.
Yeah.
That's the way I would describe it.
Yeah. So do you think like for SEO in the future, it's going to be very much like maybe in like month 3 or something like that, like when you've gone through and just had really understood the site and really gone after what are the technical fixes, that's going to be pretty much hand in hand with your content strategy? I'll just open that to the group.
Yeah, I think it's going to be super critical for you to change up the types of content that you have, so that you're no longer forcing someone to go through a text blog. You're giving the user the option to choose, and that also provides another data point for Google to understand. Okay, well, maybe this person likes video content. So if when I get home, watch a bunch of YouTube videos, I'm still the same user. I'm still logged in. They're still tracking a lot of these engagements. So when I go to search for something else, it stands reasonable for them to say, hey, when you search a topic, here's some video content to keep you engaged throughout the life cycle, like I was mentioning before. What do you guys think about that?
So I think it's important for anybody that's doing SEO to really have a code of conduct and to be honest and transparent with any project we're working on. When it comes to content strategy, it's important to come up with content that actually provides value to the users and is going to generate conversions. So, early on when I started doing SEO, it was all about ranking. So you shoved content in there regardless of whether it mattered, and then you reported on it and you got clicks even if it didn't matter, and then you maybe even got conversions. Google is fixing that. So you may rank on some obscure term that no one will ever click through, or certainly no one will convert. So when it comes up with content, you have to understand, like, what does the user want and why would they want it? And is this even the right channel for something? Like I was talking to a friend the other day who's selling a product on a Shopify website, and he was asking me why his SEO is not working. I said, because there's no demand for your product. So you may rank number 1 on your brand and number 1 on the thing you sell, but no one wants it. Like, this is not your channel. You have to do something else to make your channel. And I think that is the most critical point. Like, when we're consulting on something or when you're working in-house, you have to be able to say, SEO is not for you, or now is not the time for SEO. Let's do something else, and we'll come back to it.
Oof. What do you say to that? No one's wanting his product. That's pretty honest answer, but it would be pretty difficult to hear, I would imagine.
It's brand marketing. So if you've created something brand new that no one wants just yet, then you do the brand marketing. If you're in a commoditized space, then it's all about you beating back your competitors and ranking on the right terms and having a better click-through rate. But if no one looks for you, even if you're ranking number 1, that will not equal to sales. Yeah,
that's a great point. Because if you have to explain to someone why they need it, then search might not be the best medium to do that. And so that's a great point, Eli.
Yeah, awesome. Alrighty, I think that's probably a good place to end it. Thank you so much, Kevin. That was a phenomenal study, and I'm sure there's going to be so many people that are just going to be dying to get their hands on once we release that. So thank you so much. I will just kind of go from like this Brady Bunch type panel from Eli, Bill to Kevin. But Eli, how can people find you after this?
So I have a website, elischwartz.co. I don't have the .com, and I also have a website that redirects that, productledseo.com, or you can find me on Twitter at 5LE or on LinkedIn. Just search my name. Hopefully I'm connected to someone you're connected to, and you can find me.
Awesome. How about you, Bill? How can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Inboundy with a Y at the end. And I'm around the internet, on especially on LinkedIn, as Bill King TM. Happy to chat with anybody about SEO. So,
yeah, you've got that nice little trademark and the rocket emoji. And of course, thank you so much, Kevin. That was awesome. I always, anytime I see anything from you, I always tend to like learn like a bunch of stuff. And thank you so much. How can people find you after the fact?
Thank you. People can just Google my name on the internet, and hopefully some cool podcast snippets show up or something else that helps them fulfill their search. But I also want to big shout out to Eli, Bill, and of course you, Nick, and SEMrush for the data, for appearing, for helping, for asking smart questions, for staying up until 4 a.m. Even though it's Phuket, you must be dead and sleep really well, and hopefully not dream of direct answers or something like that.
Yeah, technically it's 5 a.m., but I'm just absolutely thrilled to be a part of it, and to see the starters as it's really going out live. So yeah, thank you so much. And that's all for us, guys. That is the 5 hours of SEO. Thank you so much to Jason Barnard, who was the host for the first part of the session, and of course to SEMrush for providing this fantastic platform to be able to deliver 7 sessions over the span of the last 5 hours of arguably the best SEO practitioners in the world. I don't know. I'm just putting it out there so that we could deep dive and share some really, really awesome actual insights. I'm just going to run through the list and just give like a wonderful little shout out. Thank you. Before that, if you are on Twitter right now, please tweet at any one of our wonderful guests with the hashtag 5 hours of SEO, just so that we can all see it and we can join in, we can add any commentary or hopefully answer any of your questions. But I will just run through the list as you can go back and hopefully rewatch this content. So of course, first up, we had Aleda Solis, who guided us through SEO for marketplaces and e-commerce websites with David Ivanel and Nitin Manchanda. Then we had one half of the Scottish SEO mafia. It was never mentioned, but I'm mentioning it now. Ross Tavendale explaining how he builds SEO campaigns like a true management consultant wizard with Juliet Van Royen and Jerry White. Then we have, of course, the other half of the Scottish SEO mafia. That's where I'm putting it all together. The illustrious Craig Campbell with tips on how to get started with affiliate marketing. And he was joined with podcast legend Judith Lewis and Harsh Agrawal. Then we had Jason Barnard, who switched out from the hosting to leading the charge with hidden treasures for your brands in the SERP, with Lily Ray and Andrea Volpini. And then, of course, there was myself and Alexis Sanders, who was doing an amazing job at going through Python to be able to give something that was transferable for scaling ranking data analysis, which was always really, really useful. And, of course, for local search, we had, of course, Greg Gifford, who was showing us the Google My Business tips to stand out in 2020 with Nikki Mosier and Carrie Hill. And of course, this session that we're finishing up with Kevin Indig, who did an amazing study for 1,200 domains and what it tells us about zero-click searches with Bill King and Eli Schwartz. My name is Nick Ranger. I'm an SEO specialist in Melbourne from Studio Hawk. Thank you so much. And I wish you a wonderful day or night. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.